Hi everyone, and welcome to the Camcycle June monthly meeting. It's our 25th anniversary live stream celebration. As always, these are a little bit nerve-wracking because we're never sure how the technology will go, but we'll give it a few minutes so that people can join in. And give us a hello in the comments so that we know who's here. 5 people. Maybe you could tell us who you are and how long you've been a member of Camcycle for. Excellent. We've got Nigel here. Nigel has been a member for 25 years. We've got Finley, and he's been a member for a year and a bit and somehow already a trustee. Sorry about that, Finley. We've got Sarah, who's been a member since 1998. Thank you, Sarah. And Tim, member number 377, close to 25 years, but definitely after Nigel. Nigel, would you tell us what your membership number is? Right, while everyone's joining us, let me tell you who we have on our meeting this evening. So we have Roxanne Beaux, that's me. I'm the Executive Director of Camcycle, just in case you haven't met me before. Then I'll tell our speakers that they're all visible now on our panel. We have our Communications and Community Officer, Anna. She's also speaking this evening. Hi, Anna. We have got David Earl, one of our founding members, followed by Clare Macrae, another founding member. Hi, Clare. We'll also be hearing from Simon, who is famous for many things at Camcycle, but particularly the organizer of the Reach Ride, the founder of the Reach Ride, which very sadly we didn't get to go on this year, but we can talk about it anyway. And we also have one of our trustees, Martin Lucas-Smith, who was also a chair of Camcycle for quite some time. So this is your superstar lineup of speakers for our anniversary special. And if you're not sick of hearing from me, I'm sick of hearing from me. So I am now going to hand this over to Anna, who can talk to us about Camcycle and what we are all about. You're up, Anna.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. You're good to go.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say to everybody that's watching this and everybody that might be watching this in the future on our website and YouTube channel is thank you for cycling. Thank you to everybody in around Cambridge over the last 25 years who has ever got on a bike, fixed somebody's bike, helped somebody get cycling, because this is, you are the people we do it for, and just by cycling you have made a massive difference to the areas that we live in. So these are some of the pictures from our last 25 years, lots of different types of bikes, people we work with, some of our top volunteers and trustees, and just some of the many lovely memories we've had over the years. So this is just a very short presentation, but I just wanted to say for Camcycle, cycling is not really about the bikes. We do love a little unusual bike. We love to see a tricycle or a bike with lots of child seats. We love to see lots of children's bikes at a school and even little dogs in baskets, but it's not really about the bikes themselves. That's not really why this charity exists. It's not about the bikes, but it's about the things that cycling brings to those who ride. And that's for lots of different people of all ages and abilities and all different types of bike. So what does it bring? It brings freedom. And cycling can bring independence. And it can also bring joy. And this is a lovely picture from our Reach Ride that we run every year. Sadly, we weren't able to gather this year, but we'll be back again soon. And it's just a real celebration all ages and abilities, cycling together. But for Camcycle, cycling is also about the things that it brings to communities. It brings thriving businesses. It brings sociable neighbourhoods. And it brings a sustainable future. And this here is a picture of, this is a visualisation of the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, which is going to go over the River Cam between the Abbey and Chesterton communities. And very exciting. This bridge is now on the building site being put together and hopefully lifted over the river later in the summer. And going back to what does cycling give us? With every push of the pedal and every turn of the wheel, we can change our lives and reshape our world. So today, if you're joining us and you're watching this and you're feeling inspired already, but you're not yet a member, please do join us. We're so close to 1,500 members, and we value the voice of every single one of them. So please join us now online at camcycle.org.uk/membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Great for a quick roundup of Camcycle. And I will reiterate, we are so close to that 1,500 members mark. So please do have a chat to a few people, and maybe by our official birthday on the 15th of June, we will officially hit that big target. And that would be a wonderful celebration, considering there's not a lot else we can do at the moment. But I will now very quickly hand over to David, and David is going to share some memories and the stories about what led to the founding of Camcycle. And perhaps, David, a quick introduction to you as well before you kick off.
Hello. So, yeah, I came to Cambridge in 1984. So I've been here like 35 years now, and originally I was working in the city centre, but in 1989 I moved to work in Barrington. So by the time I left there in 2002, I reckon I'd cycled over Chapel Hill more than 2,000 times, and I was cycling around 6,000 miles a year. I went through a transmission on my bike about every 6 months or so. I went through quite a lot of bikes and bits in the time. So in 1984, what was it like then? Sadly, we had around 4,000 deaths a year on roads in this country, twice as many as now. But since then, nearly all the improvement has been for people in cars. And in Cambridge in 1984, there was some realization that something needed to be done for bikes. You could cycle on most of the paths across green spaces, but I think that was more just historical than anything else. There were permeable street closures in Romsey and Petersfield and a few other areas. Again, I don't think those were particularly done for bikes, but they'd made the whole area much pleasanter, and they'd been there quite a while at that point when I arrived. There were some cycle lanes in Huntingdon Road, and those were considered highly innovative. It was just white lines on the road, and they're 1.5 meters wide. But this was extremely unusual at the time. And Downing Street and Pembroke Street had the contraflow, as had been fairly recently installed. Roxanne's telling me I should share my screen, but I'm not. I will in a moment. But so the Downing Street contraflow, that was about it at that point. So we still have quite a lot to come. And so if I switch on to, so hopefully you'll be able to see now the so the cars in the foreground were the things that struck me particularly about this this picture. You've got a half-timbered Morris in the foreground, and look at the railway carriages. The old, I think they're the slam door type carriages, even those. That looks like one coming in on platform 5, so it's probably a Newmarket train. Yeah, so the bridge at the station wasn't there at that point. I joined Friends of the Earth when I came here originally, and Friends of the Earth was one of the few organisations that was doing any kind of cycle advocacy at the local level. And several local cycle groups came out of Friends of the Earth across the country. In Cambridge, we published a report about the dire lack of provision, and that seems to have been quite influential in setting an agenda, if not having any immediate effect. And we published a book, which, there we are, Cycle City. So this was a proper book. The picture I just showed you of the cycle bridge, that came about because they tried a one-way closure over Mill Road Bridge with traffic lights, but they removed it after a week. So at the time we published this book in 1987, they were thinking ahead into other possibilities, and the cycle bridge at the station was one of them. But things also went backwards with the ban on bikes in the city centre, and that was largely the work of Tony Carter, and unfortunately that was whom the bridge was named after, and something that long-standing campaigners and mongers have never really forgiven. Elizabeth Arndt, who was then a young lawyer, represented Friends of the Earth at the public inquiry into the city centre closures, and we won. But the county council went ahead anyway, and bikes were banned in the city centre for 13 years. So I got next. Oh yes, the book also had some cycle maps in it. I'm jumping around a little bit here. It's one of the first set of cycle maps that were done for the city. And I remember the printers, when we presented them with print-ready artwork, they were quite amazed that we'd been able to produce the entire content of the book in such a way that they could just print from it. They said the recycled paper was very hard to fold, though. We've been doing a few other things in Cambridge for a while before that, though. Cycle Week 1923. So 1994, largely as a result of pressure from a couple of Friends of the Earth members, we got a group together to look at forming a standalone cycle campaign. I'm just going to switch back to my, back to me. That's it. So yeah, we got a group together to set about forming a standalone cycling campaign, and I'm the only one from that original group of 4 of us that is still around involved. But more people joined in as we progressed through to the June launch meeting in 1995. Many of you are here today. So obviously Claire, who's going to speak next, Nigel, who's online, helped to co-author the book that we were just talking about, Andy Wade, Debbie Banham, who did the original logo for the cycling campaign, Jim Chisholm, and many others. And I think now we still face many of the problems that we faced in 1984. Some things have improved, but we still face a council's reluctance to do things that have any serious impact on cars. The population of Cambridge has gone up by 50%, but city centre policies have meant that we've kept a lid on things too. We haven't gone down the same road as places like, say, Derby or Sheffield, and where they've had huge retail developments on the fringes. But it was a close call. Orchard Park was originally going to be a huge shopping centre right on the northern edge of Cambridge. 35 years of campaigning's a long time. It's been a huge part of my life, and but I see places like Netherlands and Copenhagen, Seville, maybe even more recently London, have achieved much more in shorter times than we have here. And I think that's got a lot to do with Cambridgeshire politics. If we'd managed to have a greater Cambridge council, I think we'd have been able to achieve a lot more in a lot shorter time. So yeah, 1995, we had a launch meeting. So I think at that point, it's over to Claire.
Thanks, David. Okay, we will hand over to Claire to talk all about the beginning of Camcycle. You're ready to go, Claire. Make sure you unmute. You're up.
So thank you very much for that great lead-in, David. By way of introduction to me, I I went to university in Oxford and moved to Cambridge in 1987, where I briefly joined Cambridge Friends of the Earth and was involved in a few meetings looking at transport campaigning. But in 1991, I moved briefly to Oxford and then back to Mildenhall and drove into Cambridge for a few years. So cycling was no longer part of my life. And but luckily for me, in 94, I moved back to Cambridge and bumped into David Earl. And shortly after that, I learned that a cycling specific group was going to be launched in Cambridge, and I was really loving being back in Cambridge and being able to cycle to work. I'd become quite a nervous cyclist by that point, having not cycled for a few years, so that was a useful perspective. And sometime leading up to April the 11th in 1995, I got an invitation to come along to a meeting to look at having a launch meeting for a Cambridge cycling organisation. And this was the earliest record I could find in my filofaxes, and that dates me, I guess. So we had quite a few meetings. We got to the stage where we were meeting pretty much every week leading up to the launch meeting on the 16th of June, Friday the 16th of June, 1995. So we had a strong panel of speakers at that launch meeting. Patrick Field from London, who was a cycling journalist, and Campbell, Cambridge's MP, who was a keen cyclist, didn't own a car, spoke very powerfully. The meeting was chaired by the mayor, outgoing mayor Joy Rosenstiel, and David talked with power and vision about what we could do as a cycling organisation. I sat at the back with a bucket, and on the spot 30 people joined up, which was amazing, and many more joined soon afterwards. One of the first things we did was to regularly run a stall in the market square in front of the Guildhall, and that was the public face of the campaign for quite a few years. A lot of organisation, a lot of people volunteered. We answered lots of questions, encouraging people to cycle. We talked to people who were vigorously opposed to us. We told an awful lot of people where the nearest toilets were. But I'm very grateful to everyone involved in that. A lot of my early involvement was in the admin side of things. We didn't have an office or anything like that. We ended up using the bathhouse on the junction of Gwyder Street and Mill Road as our postal address, and that involved me going regularly to pick up post. We had an informal ad hoc website right from the outset, and we used people's personal phone numbers and email addresses. Over time, we got a PO box, and that mostly worked. Mostly post actually got delivered to my house, which saved quite a lot of time and helped a lot. Looking back, we were involved in too many things to list, even at the early stages, all of them, but a couple that stood out for me were some pinch points were installed at the zebra crossing by Jesus Lock on Chesterton Road, and that was some effort trying to get those pinch points removed. And whilst the city centre cycling ban had become permanent, the new Burley Street cycling ban was being reviewed by the time we launched. I think it was a factor for a number of people actually joining the campaign, being so disappointed that another ban was now happening. That one still exists, but David talked about the city centre one now having been overturned. The newsletter was also a big focus in our work, and I spent a lot of time writing newsletter articles and a lot of time proofreading articles. I cannot miss punctuation errors now in text and double spaces where there should be one and things like that. It makes it really hard for me to read prose these days and not get distracted by minor typos. That's a strange, unexpected consequence. Newsletter 1 was a photocopied, beautifully laid out affair. The middle picture there is newsletter 12, 1997. Newsletter 17 on the right, that's the first one that we have colour PDFs for on the website. And you might see page 10 on the one on the right, the Chisholm Trail. So this was an early visionary thing, led obviously by Jim Chisholm, astonishing vision from my perspective, which over time led to significant support in council policies. It became an election issue when I noticed one year every MP candidate was saying, I support the Chisholm Trail, on print through every letterbox in Cambridge. And as we heard earlier, it's becoming a reality. So for me, a lot of my early contributions, having not really had any campaigning experience before being involved in the campaign, was how are we ever going to manage to do that for small things and big things? Why should anybody listen to us? A bunch of volunteers, but by continually being professional, by being patient, by making good points, by engaging with people, drip, drip, drip over time, we had more and more successes, though none, I suspect, as big as the Chisholm Trail. Then we got to newsletter 50 and someone found we typed 500,000 words already by newsletter 50, then colour in newsletter 100, and so it goes on. And I think we should all rightly be incredibly proud of that publication and what it's achieved and the feedback we get from it. We've had a few awards along the way. In 1998, we were involved in the Cycle Friendly Employers Scheme, which is a partnership of local organisations getting employers to promote cycling. And David Earl collected a Glenda National Cycle Award from Glenda Jackson on behalf of all the partner organisations. We did increasing amounts of media work, though that was never my favourite thing and never my strong points. This is one of my few TV appearances about some changes in Mitcham's Corner. Leisurely rides were quite an important part of the early years as well. They were a purely social thing, often maybe half a dozen or a dozen people, so not huge rides, but it was a chance to relax and enjoy the cycling and get away from the admin. There's a way for more people to become involved as well. An early concrete thing that was achieved, led by Nigel, a subgroup that produced and launched a cycle route map that was thousands of copies were handed out at Freshers' Fair in 1999. And subgroups, small groups of people working together, were a really key part of how we worked for many years. The Riverside Bridge, I had the fantastic opportunity to represent the cycling campaign in the March 2004 design judging. So a competition was run, and of 6 submissions, the one that was chosen was the one that we favoured. It was a fantastically proud moment for me to represent the campaign at that. And 4 years later, the bridge was opened. Still a beautiful sight today. So just looking back, I was involved in various roles in the campaign for 15 of its 25 years. I was actually only a coordinator for a few years in the middle of it, though in my memory, that's a much larger proportion of the time. And I think that's because it was a lot of responsibility, but something I enjoyed doing a lot. And I just wanted to finish by spinning through a few photos that I really enjoyed looking back over today when preparing this talk. So just a few memories on my part. So we have run some events that have some amazing, unusual bikes and unusual costumes and participants. We've had good weather, we've had not so good weather, we've had fantastic posters at events. Too many people to name, but these were some photos that I enjoyed in looking through, and some more smiles as well. So Bike Week, I think Bike Week forms a significant proportion of the photos I took at events and my partner took at events, and so probably has a slightly disproportionate representation out of the photos I was able to show, but it's how many people got involved in the campaign, and we got a lot of good support. So I wanted to finish with a thank you for everyone who was involved in starting up the campaign, for supporting it via membership or more actively. And I am so proud and so in awe of what's been achieved in the 25 years, in the last 10 years. And I am looking forward to the next 25 with bated breath and much anticipation and excitement. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Claire. There was some amazing memories there, and I can't believe that we had written 500,000 words, and that was a really long time ago. So I'm wondering if anyone can make an educated guess as to how many words about cycling we've now published in 25 years. I know we're certainly very productive. We have a lot to say. Excellent. Well, I will now hand over to Simon. So Claire was showing a lot of great pictures about Bike Week and various events. And I think that this is where Simon's done some absolutely amazing work among many other areas. So over to you, Simon.
Okay, right, sharing my screen from this one. And if I put that into that mode, slideshow mode. Okay, hopefully that is in slideshow mode. Yes, okay. Yes, I first turned up at a cycling campaign meeting at the Jesus Lane meeting house one Tuesday in 1995, I think, when the cycling campaign. I didn't unfortunately go to the very first meeting. I missed that, but I was there at the second or third, can't remember exactly when, and I joined that then. And I think about 2 meetings later, or maybe it was a year later, that I ended up becoming the treasurer of that, based on my experience as the maths club treasurer all those years ago. Anyway, I got involved. The first event that I actually remember sort of going on was this sort of bike ride, I think, that Earl organised, and it was a bike ride along the Roman road round into Wilbraham. Presumably we went down the Newmarket Road and somehow got out towards these Roman roads in the countryside near Wilbraham, and then we ended up in a pub in Fulbourn, which was a lot of fun. For my first sort of work on actually helping the cycling campaign was to get involved with what was called National Bike Week. And the idea here was to try and get some publicity for the cycling campaign and to get the message out that basically cycling is a much smarter way of getting into the middle of Cambridge than going by motor vehicle. And so we had this Minutes to City Centre campaign, and here I am in our garden, and we made these sort of 10 signs, which were just like made from photocopier paper. I got my company that I worked for said that I could use their photocopier, and we made all these signs up with these semi-scientifically arranged times for cycling and driving. And Dave Earl and I, one Saturday or something, we cycled the whole way around Cambridge, putting up these signs by sort of sticking them to various posts. And here's one, and the approach from Fulbourn, and it said Minutes to City Centre, cycle 17, drive 27, and that's by arm. And basically there was 10 of those, so no matter which, the idea was that motorists would see them while they were queuing in traffic. And it had the desired effect. It made the front page of Cambridge Evening News. So here's the front cover of the Cambridge News, and that's a picture of one of them next to the Milton Road one. And it had a front page, and it even had an opinion piece. So that was my first bit of campaigning, and it was a big hit, because it was, it made a splash as far as we were concerned. It obviously were cutting through. Other things that went on in that bike week were this marvelous breakfast that we had at Hobbs Pavilion. Amazingly, we had beautiful weather that year, and I think that must have been the first year that we did it, because unfortunately subsequent years got pretty heavily rained on, and we learnt hard lessons about organising events in what seems to be the wettest week in the year. Here's a little bit more context as well. This is a picture from, this is not actually a cycling campaign event at all. But it's just a bit of context for what was going on in September 1996. Look at this overwhelming police presence and Mill Road for to clean away a few protesters, talking about that. The following year, Claire will recognise this. We thought, well, how can we get ourselves on the front page of the Cambridge News again? And so we did a sort of a similar sort of thing with posters, putting up posters. So the idea here was to make the pothole problem of the cyclists, to give that a bit of publicity, to try and get potholes fixed. And this is pothole golf. And these signs were obviously drawing attention to how rough the roads is, and it did have the desired effect. And here's a picture of Claire on the front cover of the 1997 Bike Week. There we go. And the irony there of this as well, of course, is the other headline is "Jam Misery for Thousands," when Trinity College spent £1 million on the short section of road on Milton Road. And the Claire's headline says "Mend Below Par Streets." So that obviously did chime a little bit with the headline writers. Back in those days, we seemed to have an incredible amount of energy, because look at this list of events that we used to put on for National Bike Week. This was in 1997. And so we started off with a doctor bike. We had a tea time ride, a picnic ride, the free breakfast. There was a great showing of the Cycling City Cinema, which is a bunch of films of old cycling days. We had the Chocolate Chain Awards, which I might be able to show you a little video of that in a minute. Parade of fancy bicycles and a treasure hunt. I mean, the amount of energy we put into that was extraordinary, all to get the message out about cycling, to try and get new members to join the campaign. There we are. Here's some more of these leaflets that we put out. Oh yes, the Chocolate Chain Awards. This was I think it was Claire's idea, this, but the idea here was to have Golden Bell and chocolate chains. So if some organisation like the County Council or the City Council had done something good for cycling, we'd create a positive award for them and go and give them that. But we'd also make these negative awards, which were called chocolate chains. And actually, here's so here's a chocolate chain that we gave to the Cambridge Environment and Transport for pretty bad road marking and Malcolm Street. Here's 1998. This was another massive effort from us on cycling. I think we were still doing the cycling breakfast, but we also had this idea of arrive by bike. So we wrote to all these organisations around Cambridgeshire, mostly near Cambridge, and the idea was that if you cycle to those, you could get in for free or for reduced admission fee. And Dr. Bike, here's an example of Dr. Bike. And Jim, this idea was that we would have an event on Saturday in the Guildhall in Market Square, and to try and get people to bring in their broken bikes. And we wouldn't actually fix them because that would incur liability, but at least we would tell them what was wrong with it. And so that was, amazingly, this is a picture of a nice sunny day, but I can remember standing there sheltering underneath the shopping arcade next door when it was chucking it down. This is a colour leaflet that we actually made for the year 2000, and still a massive load of events that we were putting on. Over time, I think we found that these events weren't really scalable. And so we as a volunteer organisation, running those year after year was taking a lot of time, and eventually these these morphed into what has become the Reach Ride, which is a big event, the biggest event of the campaign throughout the year. Okay, I'm going to have a go at trying to show you a little bit of a video from one of the events. So shall I do that? Okay, so here I'm in Chrome. This is sorry, the video is actually pretty low quality, but here's just about 30 seconds of a video of the Chocolate Chain Awards. Hopefully you're getting that.
Burley Street, great for cyclists at night, but it's a different matter during the day. Say something.
Because the man said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, we can't cycle it," and then he just said, "No, go for it. Everyone else does." Ah.
So there we are. That's just a short flavour of that. Here is this is National Bike Week breakfast. So look how well we had a nice big queue of people queuing up for that in those early days. And these are bike racks that we put there ourselves. There was no bike racks around hardly in Cambridge, and so this was an innovation to put those bike racks in. Okay, if I stop that. That is basically it, Roxanne. Handing back to you.
Thank you, Simon. So many events over the years, and amazingly, we now have a Reach Ride which gets to 1,000 people. It's almost too big for us to fit everybody on the way. So hopefully we keep it at a nice round 1,000 people for future years, but you've created quite the legacy. And I can see that Martin's keen to get ahead. He's already sharing his slides. So Martin, I guess I shall hand it over to you.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Yeah, cool. So I'm not sure how I first found out about the campaign. I basically came along to a meeting at the Friends Meeting House, and I remember very vividly that it was about the Barton Road Cycleway, about how this should be designed and what should be done. So I had come to Cambridge as a student at King's College for music actually, but I ended up studying geography, and I very much sort of see myself as a geographer and someone who really passionately cares about the public realm. For me, cycling is just really about making a nicer city and a pleasant place to be, rather than sort of promoting a specific form of transport, I suppose. Anyway, so I joined in 2000 and I became coordinator 3 years later in 2003, and I've been on the committee in various guises ever since. I'm also the lucky person that's got 20 years of the official archive sitting in my house downstairs since Claire handed them over to me, so thank you, Claire. But there's lots of memorabilia there, and it's actually funny just seeing some of the pictures that Simon and others have just shown, because I have actually the real copies sitting here rather than the actual photos that I think most people have just shown. So I just wanted to give two short little stories about from my sort of time campaigning. So the first one is about Riverside Bridge, which Claire mentioned. So as Claire said, we were on the bridge selection panel. So the county council had decided to have a sort of competition to ask architects to come up with a design for the bridge. Six ideas were produced. I actually have all the original designs here that were created. Oops, sorry, I'll just switch to the right slide. There we are. So there's the Riverside Bridge that's actually been created. Yes, so six designs were done. And the little story really is that the county council came up with ingenious ways to make sure that forevermore there would be positive publicity about the bridge. Because obviously, like as with anything, whenever public money is involved, and whenever local newspapers are involved, and whenever cycling is involved, you often find that the local newspaper doesn't always give the most positive slant on a story. And so, the county council came up with the idea of putting the editor of the local newspaper on the judging panel. and that was basically to ensure that you know, the decision that was made could be seen to be attached in some way to the Cambridge News, and that really did work very well. And I think, you know, obviously they were obviously pleased to be seen as part of the decision, but I think the County Council's agenda was not entirely altruistic in that regard. So that was my first story. But the second one I want to just say about the city centre cycling ban. So here's a nice picture from 2005 when it was finally lifted. So David Earl, who spoke second, just gave a little bit of background to that. But the ban was introduced in 1992 to 3, I think it was, before my time here. Although when I worked at the student union, there was actually a file of when they campaigned against it. And I wish I'd sort of saved the archives from there before they destroyed it. But yeah, in about 2003, the council had made some sort of consultation about the city centre. I can't remember exactly what it was on. But basically, we responded, and at last minute, and admittedly, I must say, without the committee's full consent, I basically slipped into the letter that we put the idea of making Trinity Street two-way. It was a very sort of opportunistic kind of suggestion, because the problem was that, of course, at that point, there was no south to north route through the city centre. So I'd sort of slipped this into the letter, you know, almost a sort of casual thing saying, you know, it'll never happen, but there's no harm putting it in there. Some councillors had obviously noticed this idea, and immediately at the next transport committee meeting, basically said, took a motion which passed to order the officials at the county council to come up with a plan of how Trinity Street could be made two ways. They weren't saying, you know, is it possible? They were saying, you know, just basically make it possible, show us how. And the officers came up with a completely ludicrous plan. It basically involved sort of from essentially King's Parade to Bridge Street, a sort of stop-start where you had to sort of cycle for a bit, and then when it became a bit narrow, you'd stop and then remount and so on. And it was very clearly the officials, the officers at the council had obviously really basically wanted to kill the idea, and so come up with something that was so obviously impractical that it would die. Anyway, so the councils were having it. So the councillors, the politicians were having none of this, and basically, completely to our surprise, they came back to the meeting, and basically had a motion that they prepared. So 2 of the 3 political parties had clearly got together before the meeting, and basically have written a motion that said, delete the officer recommendation, replace with have an 18-month trial of cycling in the city centre. To see how well it worked, and I can say that the other political party was really not very pleased that they've been shafted in this way. But that went through. There were predictions of blood on the streets and all kinds of negative stuff. In the end, there was almost no newspaper coverage at all. It had happened, and I mean, Simon said something to me very, very pertinent about this, which is that the problem with the city centre cycling ban had basically been that the sort of reasonable people were the people that were being penalised. Stupid people who would sort of speed through the sort of traditional lycra route, if you like, but people who would speed through in a completely ridiculous and unreasonable way, you know, they would continue doing that, whatever the signage says. And you know, we all know how little enforcement there is of any kinds of policing. So it essentially meant that the sort of legal people, you know, those of us, you know, who would travel into the city centre in a reasonable way, you know, would make sure that they're careful around pedestrians and so on. They were the people being penalised. And yeah, so the trial happened. At the end of the 18 months, it was made public. And I have to say, ever since then, we've always had emails from around the country, from other places that have been trying to make their pedestrian zone cyclable. Some of which have indeed. You know, if Cambridge can do it, why can't others? But we actually argued at the time that it should be called a pedestrian priority zone. We felt that set the right tone. In other words, it's a zone that's predominantly for pedestrians, but that people cycling through reasonably should be able to do so. And that's what we have. And I think also one of the reasons that change was able to happen in 2005 was that in the previous years we've made very clear through a policy on responsible and legal cycling and all kinds of other, you know, every time we talked about cycling, we were very clear that, you know, we were in favour of responsible cycling. You know, we are not in any sense going to defend people who travel in an unreasonable way, you know, that you know would cause problems. And I think that gave councillors the kind of the confidence to say, you know, actually yes, you know, the cycling campaign, you know, has put forward a reasonable proposal that they will back any efforts by the police to crack down on stupid people doing stupid things. And so yes, the zone has remained ever since. So yeah, I think that's sort of what I wanted to say on that. I just wanted to say, I mean, the thing that I'm most proud of, I think that in my involvement was the creation of this document. I think I'm back on screen now, am I? Having you can see me, yeah. Making space for cycling. So we this was is basically, I believe, still literally the only piece of cycling guidance that is backed by every single national cycling organisation in the UK, because cycling organisations in the UK historically for the last 15 years have had a bit of a kind of tendency to sort of all be saying slightly different things and not quite talking to each other enough. But I was very pleased that we published this guidance, which was a sort of second edition of something called Cycling New Developments, and it basically had backing from basically all these organisations, including those who are a little bit more walking orientated. And this really has sort of formed, I think, the basis of our policy over the last 6 years, which is a more sort of Dutch style infrastructure, which myself, Robin, and others have sort of pushed for, and which has sort of moved us away from, I think, the kind of earlier age in the previous decades of cycle campaigning, where campaigns around the country were campaigning really for sort of a more vehicularist cycling. It was the right to use the road, which obviously should be retained, but the more kind of Dutch approach. So I'm very pleased. That's the thing I'm most proud of. And I also wanted to show you something that I felt was completely ridiculous, and I've lost it. Oh yes, here it is. So this is my favourite piece from the archives. It is a strategy written by the Cambridgeshire County Council, the walking strategy, and it is called Being a Pedestrian. And it is the most pedestrian and boring document I've ever read. And it's like all terrible council strategies. It has great intentions, but it's presented in the most terrible way, in a way that would not convince anyone to do anything whatsoever. And indeed, nothing has happened, as pedestrians unfortunately remain, in my view, by decision makers, the lowest of the low. But that really shouldn't be the case. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Lots of amazing work there, and making space for cycling is still held up. I know when I speak to other campaign groups, it's still a really helpful document to make change happen. And I think it's just one example of the impact that Camcycle has all around the world, really. I mean, we even get contacted by people in New Zealand, for example, asking for advice based on our cycle parking guide. And that influence that Camcycle is having, I think, is more relevant than ever right now, with the interesting times in which we live and must campaign. And now, apparently, I am next up on our list of speakers. So I will share my screen and I'll give everybody a little taste of the future, as well as a bit of the current, because the future and the current are colliding right now, and I will show you what I mean. Okay, it's now my turn to say, can everybody see the screen? Are we going okay? I hope so. Right. Bear with me. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm multitasking quite a bit at the moment. Can we see Camcycle, Cycling for All, on the screen?
Yeah, I've got it.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so it's our 25th anniversary. Incredible amount of work that we've been doing. And I think we've touched on a lot of the great things that happened in the sort of first 20 years of Camcycle, and big things happened in the last 5 years. We started employing some staff. So I just want to do a quick shout out to our staff team now. We've got Anna, who we met earlier this evening, who is our communications and community officer. And her work, I think, has represented such a significant step up for Camcycle, because with that extra flair for communications and the way we present ourselves, it's really helped to get our message out to a lot more people. So just a huge thank you to Anna, who works incredibly hard and I think is amazingly talented and has done a huge amount for Camcycle. And then also for our team, we have our new admin officer, Rosamond, and I just realized that Rosamond started just before the lockdown and we didn't actually get a team photo. So I'm not doing photos of anybody because we can't do some if we're missing a new staff member. So I'll just say welcome to Rosie and thanks for joining us. And I know it's been a challenging time for her trying to learn a new job in this strange lockdown situation. And just a shout out as well to our interns. So we had Emma, I guess we'd say 2 or 3 years ago now, who was our first intern, and wow, did she set the bar high. And last year we had Beth and Ellie, who also continued that amazing work and have really helped to make the Cambridge Festival of Cycling come to life. So I'll just say, you know, a really big thank you to the staff team as well for helping support the incredible work of our volunteers over all these years. Right, so what's next? That would help if the slide would move. There we go. And again, I mentioned Anna's amazing work, and here is some of it. And what we've really been trying to do now is really pull together this vision for Cambridge, and with that comes a vision for Camcycle, and trying to tie together all of this incredible work that we do. And I think that you could ask anybody who's involved in Camcycle what we do, and everyone will be able to say more, better and safer cycling for all ages and abilities in and around Cambridge. They might get the more, better and safer in a different order, but we are all on the same page and we all know what we're working for. And that is a sign of a really strong organisation that really knows what it's about. So well done to everybody who's helped to get us to there. But what does that actually mean? Because ultimately it's not really about cycling. And I think while a lot of us love to ride our bikes, we're motivated to campaign for cycling for bigger reasons than that. For many of us, it's because we understand the health benefits that come from cycling. You know, we know personally how much cycling can do for our mental health and our physical health. And we just love the rest of the world to know what that feels like and to benefit from it as well. We know that you're not going to be great at cycling and you probably won't enjoy it if you don't feel safe. And that's that really huge part of it, is about actually making it safe for anybody to cycle. And that comes down to the infrastructure. And if you have a safe place for cycling, your city will thrive and move. If you have happy people getting around, spending money in businesses, being more sustainable as well, then you get a better region. And all of these issues are becoming a very, very critical piece of the puzzle that we must put together right now. So I won't go through all of the elements on this vision, but do go and take a look at our website and you can learn more about all the elements of work that we do. We've also really tried to capture the essence of Camcycle, because as we grow, we need to make sure that we don't lose what it is that makes us so special. And that's why we've put this work into defining our values. And our work is professional. And we've seen from the things that have been presented tonight, from the very beginning, the incredible amount of professionalism and knowledge that Camcycle has put forward. And that's been key to how we've been able to influence. It's important that we keep doing that. We're always positive. And again, it's because of the vision that we have. It's the things we want to achieve. And we know that cycling is positive for us and the people around us. So we always try to be positive. We have to admit, we have to get a bit grumpy sometimes. And we've had to do that in the last week with some interesting cycle lanes that have been installed. But for the most part, we need to try and be positive. And as always, practical, you know, with real solutions to make things happen. And again, I think from the examples we've seen tonight, the way we've been able to put forward those ideas like the Chisholm Trail and really point out actually it can be done. It's that practical approach that means things actually happen. I mentioned how much knowledge we have. Look at all the words we have written for our newsletters. We're certainly informed and we want to make sure that everybody else is as well. And I think this is where Camcycle stands out among all campaigns in the incredible body of knowledge that we have. And because of that, we are so influential. And I've got a few quotes to share afterwards that shows just how much we do there. And of course, we are inclusive and we just have to look at our membership. You know, we know we need to do more to bring more people in all the time, but I think we do a pretty good job of of working for all, and trying to show that cycling is for all ages and abilities, and that you don't just need a typical two-wheeled bicycle to get involved. And I love that we have people who join our campaigning efforts who don't even cycle, but they know that it's important for everybody if some people cycle. So they are our values that we are trying to live and work by. And what does that mean? More, better and safer cycling? Well, we're spreading the joy of cycling. We're working together for improved journeys for all, and we are advocating for all ages and abilities to cycle. So if you didn't know about more, better and safer cycling, I hope you do now and get on board. So what is next for Camcycle? Well, this is looking at a little bit of what we've done. We've got great events like the Festival of Cycling, which is new. And sadly, we've had to postpone the Festival of Cycling. We're not sure what shape it will take this year. But, looking in, I love this photo because you can see all the people lined up behind me for the Cargo Carnival. And I just love to make that a longer queue every year. So what events should we be doing to get more people involved in us? We've launched the Camcycle Quest, amazing work from David Earl to make that happen last year. What other ways can we get the community involved and interested in cycling? Our amazing resources like our cycle lighting poster, very helpful not only to advise people on what lighting they should use for their cycles, but also for all those people that go on about the bloody cyclists without lights. Well, we can show that we are actually trying to do something there. Our Welcome to Cycling in Cambridge leaflet, which also has an amazing video. And I think this is, again, a great example of the impact that Anna's had in guiding the communications and the design around those resources. But we've distributed tens of thousands of these all over Cambridge to students when they come to Cambridge every year. And Martin's already talked about making space for cycling. But what other advice do we need to give? What documents do we need to update? I know that we're working on our cycle parking guide, which we need to update to include cargo bikes and electric bikes. And actually, we're realizing that maybe we weren't even optimistic enough in making our recommendations for just how much cycle parking might be needed. So do tell us, what do we need? And of course, there's our influence and our campaigning, and we're just doing an amazing job of this right now. We've just published our policy statements on our website. You can check that out at camcycle.org.uk/policy. And we're really making sure that it's clear what we stand for, because that will help us get more volunteers involved, more campaigners involved. Our influence is growing, I think, every week at the moment, and we had a great example last week with a double-page spread in the Cambridge Independent, in addition to about 3 or 4 other pages of content about cycling that we helped to shape. So we're really getting our name out there in terms of the influence. And of course, with campaigning, what an incredible example that we're working on right now, which is Spaces to Breathe. And what I wanted to do is to quickly show you what that Spaces to Breathe campaign actually looks like right now, because I will admit I would love to have done a great presentation about all these ideas that we have for Camcycle right now, but we're working too hard on this exact moment with our Spaces to Breathe campaign. And I think that it's a sign of the kind of work that we'll be doing into the future, and it's already testing some of our ideas. So back to the screen sharing. Here we go. So as we all know, well, I hope we all know, we've been in some form of lockdown for the last few months. And it certainly feels like the world is changing very quickly around us. And one of the big things that's coming from that is calls for cycling to be part of the solution. So we had just not even a month ago, we started to hear some noise about the government pushing us to do more for cycling. We had the announcement of our £2 billion fund, including a £250 emergency fund. And And not only was it the money, I mean, this is money that technically has already been allocated to cycling. It's been re-announced several times, but it's the strength with which the government is announcing this that feels very different. Boris Johnson saying things like a new golden age of cycling, and the government guidance pointing out that measures should be taken as swiftly as possible and expects local authorities to make significant changes. And more recently, last week, we had a letter from DFT, which was even stronger about what they're expecting local authorities to do if they are to get that money. So what we've been doing now with this presentation is meeting with as many stakeholders as we possibly can, so that we can really get them to understand what this is about and get them to push for the kind of changes that we want to see in Cambridge very rapidly. And as always, and I mentioned this before with our vision, this isn't about cycling. Cycling is the way that we get these things. So we know that we're here to protect the NHS, to maintain social distancing, to reduce hospitalizations, improve our overall health. We're here to keep people fit and safe and healthy. And we know that cycling helps us with our lungs, it helps us with our mental health. Clean air keeps us healthier. But also, as we're starting to come out of lockdown, it's really quite worrying what will happen if everybody moves into everyone who was using public transport suddenly shifts to cars. And we know that Cambridge is not going to function if we have more people driving. Cambridge already only works because of the number of people who are cycling. So we need to make sure that we do everything we can to keep things moving. It's a tough time for our local economy, and we know that people who cycle and walk shop locally, and we need more and more of that. And to help with that, we need more space for those businesses to trade, particularly while we maintain social distancing. And we have to keep making that point that this is about equity, because not everybody has or can afford a car. Not everybody can drive. And also we need to bear in mind that not everybody can cycle, but those who can should, because that means that there is space on the road and on the buses and on the trains for those who can't. So we're really pushing to get these messages across and to make sure our decision makers understand what this is actually about. And that by creating these temporary cycle networks, our key workers can get to work, our children can get to school, and we have space to exercise and be outside. And this is where Camcycle has been so influential, because we're ahead of the game. We're ahead of our councils, our local authorities, the combined authority, the GCP, with this work. We've been talking about this for weeks, and it feels like they're only just starting to get to it. But by being ahead of the game, being professional, being practical with what we're recommending, and showing that we have this influence, we are making things happen. And we're pointing out that they need a network. They need to identify, design key routes, identify what the interventions are along those routes to make them happen, and to get going quickly in implementing them. And of course, to monitor and manage these so that we can learn and hopefully make some of these changes permanent. I'm going to flick through this quickly because I know we don't want to be here all night. But as you can see, we're working on the network map. And this is the picture that I just showed that was shared in the Cambridge Independent, and this has had such an incredible reception from the people I've presented this to, and a huge thanks to Matthew Danish, one of our trustees, who has been putting in the work to design these routes and work out the best way to present them. But by showing that cycling is comparable to public transport, not just in how we can think about it, but also in the times it takes to travel, has really started to get people thinking. And showing how you can pop on and off the cycle network as you go along. You could use the park and ride, drive and cycle. This has been incredibly influential. And I'll say you can look at all of these routes. This presentation is on our website, so I won't go through them all, but I'll just show how much thinking we have been putting in. So here's where Camcycle's influence and reach has been so fantastic. When we launched our Spaces to Breathe campaign, we created an online form, and it's still there for people to put in their recommendations for where they want changes on the roads and along their commutes. And we've had over 150 unique suggestions come through already, and those suggestions are being fed back into the network plan and the map of interventions to help us refine those. We're also have our open letter, and we've had about 480 people sign that open letter, and that's certainly very influential as well. And it creates a talking point. It means that we can pick up the phone and talk to people and ask them to sign our letter, ask them to get their ideas and contribute them to our form. As I said, we've mapped those onto the network. And also a big part of what we're doing is helping to educate people about what can actually be done. Because a lot of people know they want their street to be a bit better, but they don't actually know what it is that could make it that way. So we're putting together as much as possible this information, and we have a new page on our website which talks all about modal filtering, which is going to be such a huge priority right now, with the government really saying that to do really quick interventions, modal filtering and point closures are probably one of the best ways to do it. The problem is lots of people don't actually know what that means, and we need to help share that. But there are a number of other ways we can quickly create this space, cycleways, junction redesign, even just turning the pedestrian crossings onto automatics. We don't have to keep pressing the button and risking catching coronavirus when we do that. Of course, we need more cycle parking. We can look at how we reallocate road space. And again, as always, Camcycle, I feel, is always thinking ahead about accessibility and making those points, and thinking about the other people who need to use our road space and our pavements. Where are the ramps going to go? How will people with visual impairments navigate this new infrastructure? How will people with mobility impairments get through things? And it's really important that we think about that if we want these kinds of interventions to be successful. If we're making changes, we need to put up signs, and of course, no narrow cycle lanes with no protection that cars can park in. We don't want that, and we need to make it clear what makes a safe and proper cycle lane. We're also really pushing our decision makers to think about low traffic neighborhoods, and that's by using those modal filters. And we're trying to show that not only can you use these streets to help make safe journeys, but it's about creating those places to be. And if we're not going on holidays this summer, then we need to enjoy our own spaces, our own streets, our own local communities. So why not capture some of those things we love about the cities we visit and bring them here and make our own local streets the best holiday destinations this summer. We can also think about the spaces around schools, because that will be quite an issue as schools start to go back, and would like to see some school streets around Cambridgeshire. Of course, there's the High Street as well, and we know that Mill Road is up for some kind of action. We don't know what that will be yet, but the County Council has certainly made clear their intention to do something on Mill Road. And undoubtedly, that is because of the amazing campaigning work we've done over the last few years to put forward a different vision for Mill Road and to challenge some of those ideas. It's not always been easy, but I think that we've helped people to imagine what Mill Road could be like. And so let's hope we get something good in the next few weeks for Mill Road. I talked about school streets, and we're seeing these examples happening all around the world. And it would just be great to have a quality picture from Cambridge that we could add to this slide. But it doesn't feel like Cambridge is a leader right now, but by having other places take the leadership position on this, we can at least learn from them, and we can show our councillors, decision makers and influencers just what they should be aiming for. And we also just need to make sure that we're talking about the communications that go around all of these interventions as well. And a communications campaign does not create more cyclists, but with such a rapid change to our road environment, we're asking a lot of people. So just talking about how we need to work together to keep each other safe on our roads, remembering that though that person on a bicycle in front of you while you're stuck in your car could very well be a nurse or a doctor that you've been clapping for in front of your house every Thursday evening. And if they're a hero, then they're a hero when they're trying to get to work. So let's make sure that we're keeping everybody safe on the roads. And I'd like to see a lot of collaboration across all the stakeholder groups around Cambridge. So this isn't just coming from one council, it's coming from councils, businesses, Camcycle, just to show that there is this overwhelming support for these changes on our roads and for helping people to make their journeys by bicycle. Now, I mentioned that the future is colliding with the current in this campaign, and this is one of the places where it's happening. At our AGM, which feels like a lifetime ago, but was only in January this year, I spoke about our plans to explore some regional model for Camcycle, where we could support campaign groups across the region. And two reasons for that. We know that we've got the resource and the knowledge and the tools to help other people with their campaigning, but also that we need a regional campaign if we're to help make things happen in Cambridge and beyond. We now have the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership and the Combined Authority. These did not exist when Camcycle started. The decisions are now being made at that level, and we need to show that there is this regional support for cycling. But we didn't have time to develop this regional model. It's just started happening by necessity because we need to get everybody working together right now to try and get some of this temporary cycling infrastructure to happen and to happen properly. And it's amazing to see that we now have weekly meetings with campaigners all over the region, including Waterbeach and Ely. We even have National Cycling UK head office tune in from time to time. And to see the amount of work that we're putting in to help these campaigns that are all around the Cambridgeshire make things happen is incredible. And again, I must say a huge thank you to Matthew Danish and to Finlay for the work that they've been doing here to support local groups. And again, this is where the presentation is helpful, because we're getting them up to speed very, very quickly on what to campaign for. So that's a really quick snapshot of really where I think Camcycle's campaigning efforts are going. I just think this is what we should be aiming for, this and more, and it's happening. It's a lot of hard work. Huge thank you to all the volunteers who are helping, the trustees for their leadership, the staff team for being incredibly dedicated to make it all happen. And I just hope that it's really inspiring for everyone. And it does feel in the last month to 2 months that our campaigning, we've done about 10 years worth of campaigning. This situation is changing so fast. So I hope that by the next monthly meeting, we have some incredible updates to tell you. And I also hope that by the next 25 years, and I just had a quick snapshot of a slide up there which said, see you in 2045, which just seems like an impossible date, but let's hope that we see something incredible by 2045. But I've certainly talked too much, and so I'll just finish off my part by saying thank you so much to our guest speakers tonight for coming and sharing their stories, but also for the incredible work that you and your contemporaries have done over the last 25 years, and even before that, for cycling in Cambridge. I think you're absolute heroes. A clap for you for getting us to this point and beyond. A huge thank you to our nearly 1,500 members, because it's your support that makes all of this possible. If we didn't have members, we would not exist. So even if that's all you do, you pay your membership and you read your magazine, you are doing your bit. The numbers really help. So thank you for that. And then, of course, to all of our volunteers now, in the past and in the future, who contribute incredible skills, I must say. Again, this is what makes Camcycle so strong. It's just this incredible collection of unique skills that we put together to guide our campaigning. The systems that we've built that are now used by campaigns all around the world, for example, Cyclescape that Martin has made, our membership system that David has made, Ensembling, which we use to make such high quality magazines with incredible copy editing and proofreading. It's just incredible. But I will just finish with some little quotes. I gave a presentation right before this meeting, and it wasn't my work. I was just sharing the collective work of Camcycle, and here are just some of the things that that the industry experts had to say about us. Brilliant. Maximum respect. Wow, brilliant. There's about 20 brilliants here. That's awesome. Really great example to follow. Great stuff. That time stuff is good. Huge shout out for making your neighborhood a holiday destination. Cracking map. What's the threshold for infrastructure that gets the blue line? Love that. That came from Brian Deegan. If you get to love that from Brian Deegan, you know you're doing some good stuff. Fantastic. Amazed by this. Fab work. Spot on. And this is amazing work from Camcycle. So these are quotes that happened just about 2.5 hours ago. And I just want you all to feel really proud, because this is how Camcycle is perceived by those around the world, industry experts. So what I'm going to do before we get to our last part is just check on Facebook and see if there are any questions. So do let me know. You've got 5 minutes to get your questions up in the comments or on Twitter. Anna will let me know if there's anything on Twitter. Nothing yet. Any questions from your side, Anna?
Nothing yet, nothing yet.
Excellent. We have a slight delay, so we're just going to leave a little bit of time so Facebook can catch up with us, and we'll see if we've got any questions. Or by all means, tell us a story or an anecdote if you've got a particularly favorite experience with Camcycle from one of our events.
I've got another short section of video, just while people are getting their questions down in the comments box, if you like.
Sounds great, Simon. Let's have a look.
It's a short one from a bit of cycling that was done around the centre of the centre of town, the Market Square, back in 1997. Share screen, and I think this starts off with Douglas DeLacy on a recumbent bike. And there's James Woodburn on my bike E. And coming up, I think you've got Clare Macrae on the social bike, going around the thing. That was a bike where 6 people can go on it, and it's a bike to encourage social interaction. So some people can only pedal, some people can only brake, and one person can only steer. So in order to make sure that you get where safely, you all have to talk to each other. And there's Douglas coming back, and there's James. Okay, that's from me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Simon. Had a few comments here. We've had one of our local councillors, Nikki Massey, say, thank you, Camcycle, for all that you do. We've had Mike Davies, who was the head of cycling projects for Cambridgeshire, saying, hearty congratulations on reaching 25. And I've not heard of this before, but apparently we had something called pothole golf, and that was Mike Davies' favourite Camcycle innovation. So perhaps we need to try pothole golf again sometime soon.
That didn't quite work as we intended. The posters that Simon showed you in the presentation of the flag with a golf ball, we put up about 40 or 50 of those, and then with no explanation. And then the idea was that somebody would write to the Evening News saying, "What are all these funny things about?" But instead of them doing that, they worked out who it was. So it didn't quite have the focus that we'd intended at the beginning, but yeah, it did mean we cycled round and round the city for a long time putting up notices.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think we are about to wrap up, but we have one final little surprise. So I'm just going to say thanks, everybody. Good night, and watch this space right now.
Okay. I'll try not to set fire to myself. Can everybody see that?
Happy birthday, Camcycle. I will spare you all us singing happy birthday on Zoom, but in your home, give us a round of applause, say happy birthday, and have a piece of cake for us. That's amazing, Anna. Is that 25 candles?
Yeah, it was 25. I've blown some of them out. Let's go for all of them. Ready?
Go. Woo!
Well done.
Amazing.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, Anna. Happy birthday, Camcycle, and everybody involved.
I'm really sorry that we can't share the cake, but next time we can gather together, we will make some cakes to share with everybody.
Yep, absolutely. And do tell us how you'd like to celebrate once we're all allowed back out and together again. Bye.